So yesterday, we started to think about Daniel. We began at the start of his story in the book of Daniel in the Bible. And as we heard, Daniel had a tough choice to make. When Daniel was taken into captivity, the king wanted him to change. But Daniel didn't believe that that was in line with the plan that God had for him. Daniel didn't believe that that was in line with the person that God wanted him to be. But as we heard, Daniel chose to place his trust in God. God granted Daniel favour with the king. And Daniel became one of the king's officials. He became a really important person in the land, somebody who the king would turn to for wisdom and advice. Daniel was one of many people that the king regarded as the wise people of the land. And one day, in chapter 2, we read that King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And this dream worried him so much that he called some of the wisest people in the land and he said to them, I want you to tell me the dream that I've had, and then I want you to tell me what it meant. But the people before the king couldn't tell him. The king decided that everybody was going to be killed. But Daniel heard this. Daniel heard the king's decision, and Daniel pleaded for more time. Once that time had been granted, Daniel went back to his friends. And do you know what he did? He said, we need to pray. We need to pray. This is the situation. Let us pray for God's wisdom in all of this. Let us pray that God would show us the king's dream. Let us pray that God would show us the meaning of that dream. And so that's exactly what they did. And that passage continues. We read that God answered their prayers, that God showed them the king's dream, that he gave them an understanding of what it meant. God gave them all that they needed at that moment in time. You know, sometimes we look at a situation and it looks absolutely impossible. But with God, the impossible is possible. In Daniel's own strength, he could never have worked out what the king's dream was. He could never have interpreted it without knowing the dream. In Daniel's own strength, Daniel would have been no different to any of the other wise people that the king called before him. But Daniel didn't rely on his own strength. Daniel turned to God in prayer. Daniel turned to God in prayer, and he relied on God's strength within him. I wonder how many of us have ever faced a situation, looked at it and gone, that is just impossible. And you know what? In our own strength, maybe it is impossible. But I wonder, if we bring those situations before God, if we come before God in prayer and say, God, not in my strength, but yours, might we see a different outcome? Can I encourage you that if you are facing any situation that feels impossible, if you are facing any situation that you just cannot see a way through, take a moment to come before God, to bring it to him in prayer, to ask him for his wisdom, and to see what God does through your prayers.